So, good evening, everyone. Well, very warm welcome to Coffee Revolution, and big thank you to Coffee Revolution for hosting this event. To start with, it's my great pleasure to welcome Iva Pekarkova, a Czech writer and a taxi driver, and an interpreter, and a translator,
and a traveler,
and a woman of all trades, basically.
Yeah.
So, what we're going to do, hopefully we're going to be talking a little bit and reading a little bit from Iva's, some of Iva's books, and then we'll have time for a discussion with everyone.
You forgot a bartender and a waitress and a social worker in the South Bronx in the late 80s. But I would like to thank...
I think we'll get to that.
I would like to thank Luděk, and I would like to thank all the organizers too, because we are like very, very happy that we can come to Sheffield, and this is our first trip to Sheffield. I hope it will not be the last. And I even managed to bring over this gentleman of color, who happens to be my partner of many, many years. And it was kind of funny because he travels. We travel together. But when he travels. So like traveling through tropical Congo or whatever, it's exactly the same thing. It's like traveling to East Midlands. So we had to get food and water supplies for a week. He was asking about vaccinations and stuff like that, and he studied the travel timetables. The train timetables for 2-3 days, and then he was just really worried all the time. But finally through the jungles of whatever, we made it to Sheffield. So we're extremely lucky.
Well done in the rain. I mean, it's not always easy to...
Right, it's not exactly a tropical rain, but yeah, we just made it. Shall we sit down?
Yeah,
let's
sit down if that's okay. Okay, so is this working? It's sort of working. Okay. If you can't hear it, please do shout. Maybe can I say a few words, a little bit about you, or would you like to?
No, you start. Okay, you start. I'll just criticize. Yeah.
So. Iva's life started in then communist Czechoslovakia, and that kind of appears in her books and in her writing, definitely in the early, in her first book. And then she emigrated in 1985, so for those who know a little bit about the history of the region at the time, only about 4 years before the changes to democracy in the region, but of course she didn't know that. She was just about to finish, was coming close to the end of her university degree in Prague, and decided to leave the country, but I'll let her explain why and what happened then. Ended up in a refugee camp near Vienna in Austria for a while, and eventually was allowed to go to the United States, where she lived for a number of years. Then returned to the Czech Republic. Then lived in Prague for a while, and then emigrated again.
And then I emigrated again. Because this gentleman who just traveled to East Midlands, and it was such a big deal actually. Up one day, and he says, "Oh, Iva, I know you want to live in London." And I said, "What makes you think I want to live in London?" And he says, "But you told me that you don't want to go to Hamburg." So this is the logic behind our life in England, but I must say I really like it. I think, do you like it, Kenny?
Yeah.
So we both like it. We are very happy, and if people ask us about our plans for the future, we just say we don't really know. We don't worry about it. We are just happy the way we are at the moment.
And one second before you continue, I would like to say I love Sheffield. It's a great place. The people are really friendly. You meet people, you ask them questions. They're friendly, answering you. I'm sorry to say we live in London, but in London, we ask people questions, they just
It's the right thing to say.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. I've lived in London for years now. Yeah, when you come here, you ask people questions. No, where is this? They just very friendly to they even leave what they are doing fully to But in London, you ask someone, you just see and maybe there are Londoners here, but people know what I'm talking about. I really love Sheffield. Please give me a big hand clap for Sheffield.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you actually understand what they're saying, because when I first came to Sheffield about 13 years ago, I had absolutely no idea what they were talking about, not because I didn't speak English. Anyway, back to you. So can we start a little bit, maybe, what made you decide to leave Czechoslovakia then?
Oh, this is a good question, which I generally speaking hate, because you know, like I just wanted to live elsewhere, and as you may know, like, you know, at that time in Czechoslovakia, you basically couldn't ever travel. Like, you could travel to the west if you were like lucky. You could travel maybe once in every 3 years for like 2 or 3 weeks, and then you had to return, and you know, like, it was basically you had no chance to like get to know the world. So I decided I wanted to know the world and just not stay there. And yeah, so this was basically the main decision. I did have like other reasons, but this was the main thing. They just basically wanted to get to know the planet a little bit, not just this little corner called Czechoslovakia.
But obviously you left some of your family behind, and I'm kind of going to refer a little bit to your first book, which this is a book about a young woman living in Czechoslovakia, doing all sorts of interesting things, traveling a lot. I think you based it on your travels, on your hitchhiking across the country.
No. I was never a highway hooker. Never.
No, I didn't mean that bit. I meant the hitchhiking.
But it's a book which came out in English. It's unfortunate it's been a while. I think it was '92. It came out in English as Truck Stop Rainbows. And it was, I think, successful, especially in like academic circles, because, you know, like many people like said, okay, finally there's a book which will kind of tell us what like life behind the Iron Curtain was like. And I am happy to say that it just got published again after 25 years. It's like the 4th, 5th edition, just this spring. And like young people who can't possibly remember like communism and this era, you know, these people just like read it and they say, oh, this is actually quite interesting, because to them, you know, the communist era is like every bit as exotic as like, you know, some exotic place.
So this is really interesting, because when I was reading the book, for me it was okay. It had two different, quite distinct parts. One of them was the story of Fialka, and the other one was basically trying to explain what the life is about. And I thought, well, I sort of know this, but then now you say, yeah, young people who are now 20, 25, that must be quite a revelation for them.
Yeah, this is really funny, because like when it first got published, I think it got like how should I say it? Not that it sold better, but it got like a warmer reception in the West, because people said, okay, finally we like understand this, whereas the Czechs say, oh, I know that too, why are you telling me? And you know, I was living in Boston when I wrote it, so I kind of like already had like a certain detachment from it. So I was like half writing it for someone who doesn't really know about that, right? And so now finally in the Czech Republic, it's coming into vogue in a way, because now it's, as I'm saying, like, you know, these people don't know about it, so they even like write to me and say, oh, this is like interesting and stuff. And there's one thing, you know, basically it's like it's a story about a girl who like hitchhikes a lot, and she's kind of like a free spirit, but then she wants to get like a wheelchair for her friend with MS, and she has no idea like how to get a wheelchair, so she decides she needs to like buy it in the West or something, and she starts like whoring herself on the highway. And just when it was published, you know, in 1992, this woman wrote to me and she said, oh, were we colleagues? And I said, what do you mean? Like, so it turned out she was a highway hooker, like in the 80s or something, and she just told me that I actually like, you know, got it right, despite, you know, I never actually tried to do that. So I probably had like good imagination or whatever, but it was like, you know, one of the best praises I ever got, because the actual whore from what I call the southern route comes and say, oh, you really wrote it well. So it was like a big success for me.
But for me, I mean, I was referring to that because Fialka, the heroine of the book, doesn't actually emigrate, although she falls in love with this Swedish guy, doesn't she? And then she decides not to leave the country, while you did.
Yeah, that's a good point because I thought like I basically this is like how should I say it? This was I basically listed the reasons why I emigrated while I acknowledged that you can have the same experiences and you can think along the same lines kind of, and you can even be like similar in spirit and whatnot, but you might decide not to leave. And like it's been like a question for like many years, like was it like braver to go away and leave the country, or was it braver to stay? I mean, no one will ever decide that. And in this case I went, and poor Fialka stayed there, and and God only knows what happened to her, or what would have happened to her if it wasn't for the revolution later.
Yeah, so you did leave. You ended up in the United States. You ended up in Boston for a while, and then from what I gather, you traveled around a bit, but you went to New York a few times, and you really fell in love with it and decided that was the place to live.
And in New York, I was a yellow taxi driver, which I'm very proud of. And it was in I think I started in 1990, at the beginning of 1990, and I quit in 96, at the end of 96. So it was like, it amounted to like 7 years. And it was quite interesting. And I got to know the city like no other city, and I don't really love any other city as much as New York because I know it so well. And it brought like a lot of little stories and stuff like that. So not surprisingly, it wasn't like stories about the passengers quite as much as like stories about the city itself, because you don't ever get the passenger in the taxi again. So if the people are like lying to you, they can basically tell you whatever, and they very often use the taxi drivers as like some kind of like seriously underpaid shrinks. So they would like tell you this and that, but if it's true or if it's not true, it's always very difficult to say. Which brings me to like the other taxi driving which I did, which was in London, not the the official black cab, but minicabs. So now I can say I'm probably the only Czech woman who ever drove a taxi on both sides of the street. And well, at the beginning I kind of did right on did the drive on the right a little bit, even in England, but then it kind of like got better, and so now I can say I drove both on the right side and the left side. And I used to have like terrible dreams about it then, but now it's better. But there's another woman, a friend of mine, who just recently moved to London, and she wants to become a taxi driver. And she had been a taxi driver in Teplice, which is like a small, how should we say it, small city in the Czech Republic. So there's some competition coming up.
But then it's not New York, is it? Okay. One of your books was based around that was translated into English, was based around your work and as a taxi driver in New York.
Yeah, actually I wrote quite a few books about New York because I was actually attached to the city with like a very strong bond. But the one which actually I think made the biggest splash was called "Give Me the Money," and it was translated by me. And I'm like very proud of that one too, because like some people told me that it really doesn't read like a translation, and I also found out it's much easier if you are the writer, if you are the author and the translator at the same time, because if you don't like have a sentence or even a paragraph, okay, chuck it off, like, what would you do with it, chuck it out. So this is like what really helped, and I'm very proud of it. There used to be a time when I spoke, still with like a foreign accent, but you could tell that, I lived in New York. I mean, these times are long gone, because they got like, now I have been in London for like 80 years, and in the meantime I traveled. This guy speaks Nigerian pidgin English, so my accent is like all over the place now. But I don't know, should I try and read like a little bit of this thing? So basically, I should just like say what the story is about. It's basically about this young woman who comes to to New York and starts driving a taxi, and because she's illegal, unlike me, she has to marry someone who's legal, and in her case it happens to be a West African guy from I'm not sure, Mali, and then this guy says, well, I married you, so now you have to marry my cousin, and he doesn't really worry so much about the fact that she's very much married to him. So it's like, these little things behind like immigration, behind like, what's going on behind like, what you can see like on the surface. It's also, since I drove in a taxi for so many years, I knew about the little tricks the drivers could use, or even like the owners of the garages could use, things like that. But I chose one, hold on, there's my glasses. There's just one which was actually, usually, people in America, when I had readings, people in America usually liked it. So let's see if they like it in South Yorkshire as well. So let me just try. It's called She and He. Talib's good luck charm lay on the top of a chest of drawers, out of reach of the curious jinn, who wasn't allowed to as much as look at it too closely, so it wouldn't lose its power. A yard away from it, Talib was presently screwing. With his consistent thrusts, he pushed Jinn into the corner by the bed, until her head was all but trapped between his love and a sloppily plastered brick wall, through which Harlem penetrated into her skull, taking her thoughts away. The center of her body belonged to Talib. With his velvety, ebony-colored, pencil-shaped dick, dressed in an ill-fitting, smelly, lubricated, disturbingly light blue rubber of the Trojan brand. Talib kept thrusting and thrusting, mumbling, "Sherry, Sherry, Sherry," whereas Jinn, who already knew that this was one of the few situations when Talib actually listens to her a bit, said, "We gotta pay the phone bill. Sherry, je t'aime, 378.26. And almost all the long-distance calls are yours. I'll run and pay it, that's no problem, but you gotta give me the money." "Oui, oui, oui," said Talib, whose English worked only when he was sitting or standing, and then he began to speak Mandinka. The harmony of sounds and movements made Jinn come pretty big time. A tropical ocean washed over her, and tiny neon blue fish bit her feet until they tickled. "Oh man, do I love him," a thought shot through her head, and she tried to make that moment last forever, to imprint Talib's face on her palms, to let the Mandinga language penetrate her more completely than the police sirens wailing outside, than the screams of kids in the street, the dirty snow, the phone bill. But the neon fish hadn't swum away yet, and that gentle and hoarse language began to sound suspicious to her. Perhaps Talib is yelling at her now. What does she know? Sometimes she yelled at him too, tenderly, in Czech. She stroked Talib's tiger shoulders. "I don't want to bother you, but we owe 378.26 for telephone, and it's all calls to Mali." "Oui, oui, oui." Talib pushed her farther and farther into the corner, even closer to Harlem, that fragrant exotic neighborhood. "Oui, oui, 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 oui. So you'll give me the money right away? 378.26. Oui, oui. And tomorrow I'll go and pay it." Wait. Shoot. "Oui, oui, oui," Talib moaned. Then he fell down on her like a cutwood bamboo and kept repeating, "Sherry, je t'aime, je t'aime, je t'aime. Today I make you baby, baby, baby." And his father's pride wasn't the tiniest bit hampered by the negligible fact that he just wasted the juices of life into an ill-fitting light blue condom of the most common brand. So
yeah, that's definitely a theme that appears in your books quite a lot. And I don't mean the
sorry,
telephone bills.
I didn't hear
That's
you.
definitely a theme that appears a lot in your books.
which theme?
The one of sex.
No.
I read a transcript of an interview that you had with Jan Čulik up in Glasgow when you did a little tour of the universities of, where they teach Czech. By the way, you left this one out in 2000, so thank you for coming now. But you said something like, oh yeah, well I was writing about sex when I was younger, but you know now I'm calming down. This was 14 years ago. I've just read your latest book.
Which one is that?
Lev Hartice?
Yeah. It's
anyway, that's not been translated yet, so. But that's.
I'm catching second breath. Only in writing about it, not in actually doing it.
That's fine, but no, I mean, I think it's very interesting that you do write about that very openly, and I think unlike many writers.
Well, the latest book, which was called Levhartice, which means she leopard in English, which it hasn't been translated into. It's like a Czech. There's a story of a Czech woman who's like already like in her early 40s, and she comes to London to basically forget like a major family tragedy, and yeah, I mean there is some sex and stuff like that, because she's like one of her treatments is like basically sex, and I had some. I'm not sure if this is a success or not, but like one reader wrote to me and she said, well, Mrs. Pekarkova, I really did love your Lev Hartice book so much. I'm like just like a little bit too young for that, like I'm like 38, but I understand exactly that this will be like this is how it will be with me when I'm like the proper age and stuff like that. But then I loved it so much, I gave I bought a copy for my mom, and it seems like she had some kind of minor like heart attack when she read the book, and but then then I like said, oh, I'm like so sorry, like what can I do, like can I send her some chocolate or something, I mean what can I do about this? She says, oh, and she like wrote back and she said, well, actually it wasn't such a bad idea to have like a minor heart attack, because she's quite well, and this is like now she's like under observation, now she understands she has a heart condition, and if it wasn't for your book, who knows, maybe like 2 years later she would have like a massive heart attack, and maybe she would have died. So in a way, while it seems like I actually almost killed this poor, not so young lady, in fact maybe I helped save her life.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, why not write about sex and save people's lives? That's really great. No, but that we'll maybe get to that part of your writing, as in the later part of your writing. But is there anything else from the book that you just read that you wanted to?
Yeah, I have prepared for you. There's a book which is like, I think, the latest book, which is at least partly in English, which I have published. And it's called Letters from London, and it's actually a textbook, but it's for like completely advanced students. We didn't like adjust the language to like any student needs or anything, and it's basically meant to show like what life in London and England could be like to like a person in the Czech Republic or Slovakia even, who has like his ideas but doesn't really know that much about it. And some of it was I think the book was like it's selling just fine, and like people are writing to me and saying like this is actually interesting, because like it's like a take on like London and England, which I haven't really ever seen yet. And I'm very happy, because I'm sure you guys, were like very educated. Karel Čapek, the very famous Czech writer of the first half of the century, he wrote Londýnské listy, which is basically the same thing, like Letters from London or London Letters or whatever. And so they basically compare it to it, and they say, oh, this book was kind of needed, because while he wrote about England in the, I think, early 30s or something, if not late 20s, I'm not quite sure, around 1930, like there was like a huge gap of like 80 years, and someone should finally like write about the differences from like between like what we originally thought it was like and what it's actually like.
Yeah, and I mean, you say this is based on your blogs.
This is based on my blogs, which are they are like freely available to read on iDnes, but they are in Czech. So just like this is not even my translation. I didn't dare to translate into British English, but a friend of mine, Pavel Tajner, who's like a very good translator, did it for really extremely little money. Just like we all like worked for peanuts to put this book together. But I think the translations are very good, and he did it like an idiomatic translation. And what I think we should do, I think I can only, how many can I read? One, probably one. So I'll ask the readers, the viewers, what they might want to hear. Hold on. Okay, Czechs, Slovaks, Hungarians and other Poles in London. England just ain't what it used to be. Sec.
So that's one of your options?
That's one of the options. The more languages you know, the more monkey-like you become. Coming home pissed from church, troubles of the Anglican Church. All about the Cockney nation, rooster's egg, and the connecting up of a loaf and a hoover. Is there anarchy in Britain? I am really not happy about this. Can the English deal with the extremists? So, your call.
Any preferences?
Which one was that? The more languages you know, the more monkey-like you become. This guy will like beat me later on, but he would beat me for the church thing too. The more languages you know, the more monkey-like you become. Kay strolls down the platform of Stratford Station, his place of work, and behind him hears Czech voices and wild merry laughter. He turns round and sees a group of youths pointing at him. At first glance, they resemble Londoners from the outskirts. Their trousers are hanging dangerously off their backside. The hairstyle is in keeping with recent fashion, with that ridge along the middle, and they all look worldly. But there is something in which they differ from the locals. Even though smoking has been outlawed for some time now, they each have a cig in hand, and in the other hand a tin of lager, although, likewise, drinking at the railway station has been forbidden for ages. Both are punishable by a fine of £80, but they are oblivious of the cameras recording their behavior. Their attention is focused on Kay. "Hey, look, a monkey!" one shrieks out, in Czech. "Bloody hell, a monkey, a black monkey," another concurs. "Monkey, hey monkey, come here! Hey, come here, you monkey!" shouts a third one at Kay. He slaps his thigh at the same time, seemingly indicating where Kay is meant to go. Hard to say why they chose Kay as the source of their amusement. After all, they must have seen lots of black people in London's outer suburbs. Kay took 3 paces towards them. "Hey, look, he's really coming over. He's bleeding coming." The third one was choosing. "Come here, monkey, come on. I've got a banana, a big great banana. Have some?" He snorted as his own joke, and the other obediently laughed, along with their erstwhile colleague. Kay took another 3 paces towards them, sweetly smiled at the lads, and using his best Czech retorted, "I hear you." The ensuing panic in the ranks of the boisterous explorers of the jungle called London is beyond my powers of description. The lads attempted to flee and, at the same time, asked Kay where he learned his Czech and, to boot, explained to him that in the Czech lands the term monkey is something of the order of maid. Kay grounded them so perfectly with a few words that they looked shell-shocked. They simply couldn't fathom that someone who looked so alien and foreign could know something about them and even understand their language. The comment was succinct. Sure, no problem, I like speak Czech, Kay responded. Welcome to London. And went his own way. Kay is like that. He told me later that he'd have loved to have added, "Hi, you white monkeys," and when the lads would have taken umbrage for being called names, he'd calmly explain, "But surely a monkey is something like a mate." But he didn't say it. He is too courteous. I am not sure whether this meeting turned the lads into non-racists. I have no proof of that. But I'm absolutely convinced that in no other country nor faraway continent will they ever shout at strangers of a different color or nationality, "You monkey." Unless that is, they are armed to the teeth and ready for a brawl. Czech language is sweet tang in the sense of a safe, secret tongue which could be used to rail against people anywhere and anytime without people being able to understand a word, was lost to them forever. They'll be in the same boat as folk whose mother tongue is English. Wherever they go, they are at a loss as to who speaks their language and understands every single word. One can assume that they will be forced to hold their tongue to some extent at last. Czech is losing its niche as a secret language and has been experienced by quite a few tourists who ventured to exotic countries, or if one of them had addressed an exotic-looking individual as a monkey. In fact, though, remains that over the last 5 to 10 years, people bringing racism to Britain tend to be East Europeans, or more precisely, citizens from the most recently admitted members of the European Union. I mean primitive racism of a type which has no need to apologize for itself or elucidate in any way. A form of racism not arising from any traumatic personal experience. Most people from these countries have only rarely come across a black person and didn't strike up a conversation with any of them. It's something that must have, to paraphrase a certain poet, germinated within them and been fertilized by their been fertilized by the xenophobic atmosphere of their native lands, and awash with a totalitarian mentality, it grew into proportions unseen elsewhere. It then bloomed, bore fruit, and that fruit is now being disseminated westwards thanks to the gentle flow of new work opportunities within the European Union. It takes root in Western countries which dealt with these infantile stages of multiracial coexistence some 50 years ago. Sure, I know that in Britain, and likewise in every single country in the world, one can find a whole ensemble of racists in their most grotesque form of stereotype. The truth is that the English ones always introduce their uncompromising attitude to other cultures by certain phrases, like, "I am not a racist, but this country used to be a Christian one, and as a Christian I object to. There isn't enough work here for people born in this country, and then some half-literate immigrant from," and so on. These folk feel the need to pull out statistics, often extremely dubious ones, and to expound real stories, often handed down about 60 times. They feel the need to explain themselves somehow as to why they think the way they do. This need is even felt by Englishmen and Irishmen who are pissed as a fart. Believe me, I know. For several years I drove them home in my taxi from the pub and listened to all these commentaries. Their speech may have been slurred, but they were still gentlemen. Amongst Czechs, Slovaks, Poles, and I presume also Hungarians, Bulgarians, Romanians, and citizens of the Baltic states, there must be many individuals who do not have this need. They are capable of approaching their fellow countryman or any other white man who understands his language at least to some degree and say, "I hate blacks," as if anyone gave a damn. Not for it. Kay has known for ages how to say monkey in Czech and in Slovak. Together we dug it out in Polish, maupa, in Hungarian, majom, in Romanian, majmuca, and in Bulgarian, maimuna. We must add to this Latvian, Lithuanian and Estonian. We also found out how in each of these languages one says, I hear you. When Kay gets bored at work, he cocks his ear and listens to what groups of tourists or newly arrived immigrants are chatting about, particularly if they are pointing at him or focusing on him. He has caught several Poles out, but as he spoke Czech to them, I don't know whether it worked. In any case, if you are, by any chance, strolling around London and meet a black man who addresses you, "Hiya, you white monkey," please don't be startled. After all, it means, welcome, my European brother.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I feel through reading your blogs and that you sort of try to educate Czechs a little bit about multiculturalism. You have written a book about.
Well, this is a textbook, so it's like it's supposed to be educational. And as a matter of fact, this is the story which I have read like in Czech, like numerous times in schools, to 10 to 16 years old, and it seems to be like working because the kids kind of get something out of it, which is really good.
Because you're right. I mean, racism definitely works in the Czech lands. How would you compare it for those who maybe don't know the Czech Republic or don't know so much about it? How would you compare? Because I mean, it does explain a lot what you said. How that it's at a different level, racism still works and still appears in both Britain and in the Czech Republic. But
well,
what are your experiences?
This is what I was saying, that it's not, thank goodness, like racism doesn't seem to be in vogue in places like Britain and most of like Western Europe, with the possible exception of France and Italy perhaps. But basically, I don't really know. I can't really gauge the situation in like Poland or Hungary and stuff like that. Hungary is like very, very bad now because it's basically openly racist party Jobbik, right? Which is even unconstitutional, according to the Hungarian constitution, is in the parliament and has been there for a while. And they're like the ones who basically want to get rid of like all gypsies and stuff like that, and so the situation in the Czech Republic isn't probably as bad as in like Hungary or even Slovakia, where there's lots of like local leaders lately who actually just profess like hating the gypsies and stuff like that, and so the Czech Republic is not so bad yet, but it's still very openly racist in many ways, and that's how it is. I mean, Kenny will disagree with me because he says that he never ever met like a racist in his life and stuff like that. But it's his fault because he's this study personality, and he just doesn't really notice. You can call him names to his face and say, "Oh, come on, you didn't really mean it. I love you too," and stuff like that. But
if I may come in, I mean, what do you expect me to do? I remember it was years ago. I was, I think I was, I don't know where I was, if I can remember where I was going, and then I used to live at,
come here, you can use this.
I used to live then at, I used to live then at this place they call Petrovice in Prague 10. So, I was coming from Alastra now, you may know Prague, Alastra Messi, so I was working there then. So I was going home at about, say, 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock, something like that. I finished my work. I just decided to hang around a little bit. I was longer. I said, okay, let me jump on the tram. Instead of taking the bus, I said, okay, let me just start going on tram 22 then. Tram, I think 57 then, yeah. So I was going home. Then, there was this guys who entered. Yeah, it was about 12, I'm sorry. So these guys entered. So it was in summertime. They saw two guys, they entered, they said, "Hello, how are you?" I said, "I'm fine." They said, "Oh, we love Africa, this and that." I said, "Oh, I love you too." Then they talked to me like in Czech. I said, "I love you too." Then they said, "Oh, have a nice time." And then I told them good night too. We shook hands and they left. So between them,
Later it turned out they were actually skinheads.
no, this was very skinny. So then another guy entered somewhere around. As we went further, he entered. Then his head was just skin. He was wearing black. So for me, I was on the tram facing that way. So this guy came. He was standing behind me with his hand in his pocket. So I turned around facing him, because when you don't want to back you don't want to back your enemy. You'll be looking your enemy in case you want to make enemy. So this guy had his hand in his pocket. I was wondering, what is he trying to do? Then he just went like changing his face. I can see his face like changing in real anger. He looked at me and said, "Hey, hello." Then I said, "Hello." I said, "Hello." And he said, "Hey." He said, "How?" Then I said, "How?" In a nice way. Then he said, "I don't like blacks." Then I said, "Okay, what have that got to do with me?" He said, "Yeah, I don't like you too." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because you are black." I said, "Okay."
Fine.
Because from the word she said, this is what I'm trying to say. Okay, I can't like start fighting him or tell him to go to. No, I wouldn't do that. And I told him, "Okay, I am sorry. My father is black. My mother is black. My grandfather is black. My grandmother is black. So this is why I'm black. Okay, I am sorry. When I'm coming to the world next time, I will try not to be black." So I can see his face just change a little bit, as if he's trying to smile, but he's trying to hold it back. Then, as we were just still looking at that, okay, I am sorry. When I'm coming next time, he said, "Promise, when I'm coming next time, I'll try not to be black." Then he looked at me. Then as he was just talking, everybody, because in the Czech Republic it's somehow, everybody was just, they just like stayed clear, left the two of us. So on the long run, this guy decided to like, somebody now called him, so somebody now said hello to him, say, "Ahoy," which means hello. Then he now looked at the person, then I systematically went to the tram driver, knocked on his door. The tram driver said, "So yeah." I said,
What's up?
I said, "Yeah, what is it? I said, "Proceed was pan, my problem," which means I have a problem. He said, "So 2 years a problem." He just told me like,
What kind of problem?
Yeah, so Sakrajalash,
What the hell are you doing?
So I said, yeah, there's one guy who want to make problem with me. He said, "Why am I black?" Then the tram driver said, "That's a funny question." Then he said, "What answer did you give to me?" I told him that my father is black, my mother is black. So next time when I'm coming to the world, I'll try not to be black. Then the tram driver said, "Oh, that guy, say baby, glass, baby."
He's stupid.
He said, "Stay here by me. Stay here by the." He opened his door and said, "Stay here by me. If he want problem, I will call the police and they give him." So he.
And also, just to interrupt you, Kenny, I think you're like really good at sidestepping violence, and we actually did it like quite a few times. Only once did I have to like actually physically attack somebody who physically attacked Kenny. But it was at a time when he was, like applying for Czech citizenship, and basically if there's like any brawl, any fight, and if like anything happens, then of course like no matter what happened, like he will, there will be some kind of procedure or whatever, and he will have like a big spot on his reputation. So this guy started like, kicking Kenny and stuff like that, so I kicked him too, and thank goodness he was like very, very drunk, so he just fell down on the ground and then we walked away. So this was basically it, but generally we don't even try anything like that, and he's like absolutely amazing how he like really confuses these people who like all they look for is like some kind of like huge conflict and like a lot of like violence and stuff like that, and he just says, "Oh, I'm sorry, like okay, you don't like me being black, I'll try to be someone else next time, sorry," and they just don't know what to do.
And another thing too is what I want to say, because in my own belief I just feel that maybe you may disagree with me here, but my own opinions, I just believe that wisdom is better than weapons of war. That's my own definition, that wisdom is better than weapons of war. I can systematically talk to you in a friend. I mean, I remember one time, this was in Miami too. Then
Can you let me remind you that this is my reading?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but
So, I mean, he has many
no,
interesting.
there was one time I went to. This was in Miami, yeah. So I went out at night. So I got to this club. So immediately I got the entrance. Everybody was just looking at me like, what is he doing here? On the long run, the guy behind the gate who collects money asked me, so, why are you here? I said, I've come in here to enjoy myself. He said it's the first time a black guy is coming in there. Then I was like sitting by the bar. I wasn't drinking any alcohol, just drinking Coca-Cola. Then there was this guy, I was sitting on the table, there was this guy sitting by the bar. He kept looking at me, looking. On the long run, he walked towards me. I'm sorry, I'll just use you to, yeah. He just came to me, just came like this, just walked towards me. Then he looked at me in the eyes, then went back and sat. Then again, he came to me, second time, he looked at me, I was just wondering what is happening. Then he went back again. Then later he came to me and said, oh please, can I touch your skin? I said, yeah, okay. Then he went like this. He said, oh, didn't you see spinach? Which means you're not dirty. He just went like, he said, oh, you're not dirty. I said, dirty? I took my bath before coming here. He said, no, I thought when I touched your skin. Then he went again and sat. Then later again, he came back again. He said, oh, please, can I touch your hair? I said, okay, yeah. Because I don't want any competition. I was the only black guy there. Then he went to my hair. Then my hair was like a little bit. Then he went and touched it. He said, oh, your hair is like a sponge. I said, my hair is like a sponge. He said, yeah. Then later again, he came back again. I said, oh, I should make his own hair look like mine. I said, how can I? I mean, how can I do that? So the
You can do it for his children.
Yeah, he said, then he now told me, I was thinking he was trying, he said, he doesn't drink. I said, can I buy you a drink? Because I'm just trying to say, can I buy you a drink? He said, no, I don't drink alcohol. I just drink something tea to, I drink no alcohol. And I bought him something like Coke or Fanta. I started drinking. He said, please, I'm not a racist. I said, yeah, I know you're not even if he is, I wouldn't say he is. I would say, yeah, I know you're not you're not a racist. Then he now went and said, okay, you see, actually, I'm sorry the way I behaved to you. See, actually, I haven't, because sometimes you need to educate people, you know, because...
I'd like to shut this.
Yeah, I'll finish soon, yeah. So,
we need time for questions.
Yeah, okay. So, this guy now went and they said, okay, he's not a resident there. He thanked me for the drink and said, yeah, you haven't really spoken to a black person before. You've seen the black person on TV and things like that. So, I mean, as I say, wisdom is better than weapons of war.
Thank you very much. And yes, I mean, there's one of the things that you say also when you travel to Africa. There's this completely different attitude towards.
They did exactly the same thing, but only women. They were just like test you, which was like really kind of, like after the first 30 women who actually did this to me, I wasn't feeling very good. But Kenny went through this 300 times and he's never complaining. So it's just this little cultural exchange. And they also say, oh, what did you do to your color? What kind of cream do you use?
Okay, so I think we'll move on to questions.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So are there any questions?
You can join in.
Thanks so much. It was great. Just a general question. When you went to New York, did you intend to work as a taxi driver from the very beginning? And if yes, was it what was behind it? Was it just the wish to go on?
Yeah, I'll tell you what was behind it. It was
Can I just repeat the question? Just to
okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
The question was, did you intend when you went to the States and you went to New York, whether you intended to be a taxi driver or how that happened?
Well, I had no idea I would end up as a taxi driver. I started out as a social worker in the South Bronx, which was like really a life-enhancing experience, I must say. And I know everything about drugs and things like that, like in and out, and you know, like it was quite an adventure then. And then basically, you know, what was behind my taxi driving in New York was pure laziness. Never mind, you know, like the 80-hour weeks and stuff like that, but I could like drive for like so many days or weeks or even months, and then I could just like, you know, stop doing it for like half a year, go wherever I wanted to, come back and start driving again. And I never discovered any other job which would allow me to do precisely that. And besides, I kind of fell in love with it. It was like really, it was amazing. And, you know, like, you know, I fell in love with it so much that, you know, like this whole book, you know, the Give Me the Money book is about really nothing but about like my love for New York.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When you were writing Give Me the Money, did you write that at the same time as your taxi driving, or was it a retrospective?
This was kind of at the, I was still driving.
Right.
Yeah, but I still, when did I write it? I think 84, 85, and I stopped driving in, 94, 95, and then in 96 I basically stopped driving. And I think the book had something to do with it, because I thought, well, you know, like now that I have written, you know, like a full-length novel about it, why would I continue driving? I mean, there's really no point. Like, all the stories are already like used and stuff like that. You know, what else am I going to learn? And you know, there was no option that I would possibly like drive for money only. There was no way. So then soon, like, you know, I started looking for like different ways of making money.
I was interested at the beginning. You talked a little bit about your audience and how when you wrote your first novel, it was kind of, you were already living abroad and you were thinking of it for people living abroad to learn about the communist period in a way, and how that audience has changed. And obviously you had an audience in mind for this book as well. I was wondering to what
Which one? You mean this one?
That textbook. I was wondering to what extent you write with an audience, a particular audience in mind, and who they are.
Yeah, so the question is how you were thinking when you wrote your first book, you were thinking about a certain audience, and what sort of audience were you thinking about when you wrote this book, or did you think about any audience?
Well, you know, I think like it's a very difficult thing. You're basically walking a tightrope between like, you know, sucking up to the audience and just like not giving a damn about them, right? So this one, it really does have like a specific audience in mind, you know, because it's really aimed at like people who want to learn more about England, who are still like Czechs, who are still like, you know, improving their English and stuff like that, but who want to learn more about London, England, and so on. And you know, this is what the publisher wanted them. So this is like really kind of like aimed at, you know, at like, well, almost like teaching, educating people a little more about what's going on in London and England. But generally speaking, I have a hard time with this, because, you know, like, it would be, you know, sometimes I write for like, let's say, one person, just like a specific person, and think, okay, this one will know like what I'm talking about and stuff like that. But you must not overdo that, because then if you just write for one person, then, you know, how about the, you know, almost how many 7 billion others who will just have no idea what you are talking about. So you have to kind of like, while you don't suck up to the audience too much, you should like keep in mind that, you know, like, that you have to explain some things a little bit and stuff like that. I mean, that's how it is. It's not always easy. It was very difficult for me, especially when I was like living in New York. You know, I somehow had a feeling that everyone knew something about America, even in the Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia then, and it wasn't so. And so it like took a while for like the people to actually understand some of my older books, because they were not written with the Czech reader in mind quite as much as they should have been.
So, picking up on that, does that mean that you feel you have changed your views on how you're
how you're writing, or that your writing style has changed or developed or matured?
So, has your style changed? Has your writing matured?
Well, I sure hope so. I mean, like I have been writing for like 28 years now or something. So I do hope that my writing style did change and possibly develop into like, something hopefully better. And the thing is, like when I wrote the very first book, which I had the mixed blessing of like, preparing for like the next publication just this spring. I just couldn't believe it was actually me who wrote it. Which doesn't mean that I disliked it, but like there were like some things which I would never ever say like this anymore, or wouldn't even think about it. And there, at the same time there were like passages which I thought, well, I simply can't, even if I tried very hard, I can't write, this kind of like almost like naive beauty. I can't like do it anymore, no matter how hard I try. So I suppose the style changes, and this is how it is. I mean, you just have to live with it.
More questions?
So which do you prefer? If you were looking at you and you were writing as objectively as you can, do you prefer the naive ones, or do you prefer the 2014 versions of your style?
Well, of course, obviously, I like myself more and more as I get older, which is like what we all should do, really. So obviously, while I kind of give some respect to myself of 28 years ago, I am definitely a much better person in so many respects today. So, I'm definitely happier with this. And if I thought like, that I'm like changing for the worst, I don't know how I could possibly continue writing. Say, like let me try to just like copy my style of like 30 years ago, and it just simply doesn't work. So I'm like trying to like learn more about life and the world and whatever, and like society, and hopefully about writing as well. And then of course like what you aim all your life is like to write the book you like really will love the most, and you keep hoping, and like 2 days before your actual death, you still keep hoping.
More questions?
About your life, I think I heard something about ended up in a refugee camp in Austria. Can you say something more about that? How did you end up in a refugee camp?
The question is about the refugee camp. You ended up in the refugee camp in Austria. How did you end up there? Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I had the good fortune to end up in a refugee camp in Austria called Translator, which was about 22 kilometers south of Vienna, and it was actually, we all thought the conditions were really atrocious, but in fact we were like extremely lucky to be there. And this was, even, like when I first came there, when I immigrated, I was so uninformed because the country was like really so severed from like all information and from like the rest of the planet, that I had no idea there would be such a convenience as an actual refugee camp. I was convinced I would like, escape over the border. I knew nothing about like work permits and, like stuff like that. And I was convinced I would like, escape across the border, live under a bridge for like 2-3 years, learn the language, somehow like, figure out how to keep on living and blah, 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 blah. And I was like willing to do it because I like wanted to leave the country and live elsewhere. And then, then I came to Austria, voila, a roof over my head, 3 meals a day, ain't I a lucky bitch? And so this was actually really funny, and I spent about 8 months in the refugee camp. 10, but 10, 11, but I managed to like escape for like a while and live in Vienna. And then, like of course, as like any major experience of my life, I wanted to write a book about it. And it's really funny because the book, the preparation, the research for the book sent me to Thailand in the late 80s, because I was thinking, well, you know, like if I want to write about one refugee camp, I should have some kind of perspective. I can't like, you know, just like write about this one, I should know like some other refugee camps as well. And when I went to Thailand, I just discovered I ended up teaching English in one of the better refugee camp in southern Thailand for about half a year. And I was thinking, oh man, I was like so damn lucky. I mean, we actually had some kind of future, and there were like a very small number of people who actually couldn't get into any country, who actually were not accepted anywhere, and who like basically died in the camp. And most of the stuff which, like the bad stuff which happened in the camp was basically our own doing. I mean, the refugees doing. And you know, we had these like really wild fights, like, you know, the Albanians against the Romanians, and the Czechs against the Hungarians, and there were no rations, incidentally, because this was still at a time when they thought like rations were not safe in Europe, like so close to Russia. So they usually shipped them off to Canada or somewhere very quickly, just to like save their life if they managed to escape. So there were no rations, but I could imagine, you know, like if they would like definitely be like a big gang, and they would like beat us all up, and it was like really kind of awful in the camp, but at the same time very, very interesting, and from like a psychological and sociological point of view. And you know, like I met obviously like lots of like Czech and Slovak people there. And before I had left the Czech Republic, I was trying so hard for like several years to like get to know Czechoslovakia like as much as I could, because you know, I didn't think I would ever come back. So I thought I knew it thoroughly. I thought I really knew it. And then I came to the camp, and I saw people who I had never ever met, the likes of who I had never ever met before. And I didn't believe they could possibly exist, like, you know, extremely primitive, you know, like absolutely like unbelievable scum. And they were like all there like in the camp, like, you know, giving the Czechs and Slovaks like a bad name, even though these types of people were very difficult to actually ever encountered in you know, in the Czech Republic or Slovakia. So this was very interesting in this point of view. There was like another point of view, which was like, they say like life in a refugee camp, like Treiskirchen, I can't talk for everyone, but you know, like Treiskirchen at least, it like they say, it's sped up relationships. So you could basically have like a, you know, like a relationship, you know, like you fall in love, you basically, you know, spiritually, mentally marry, you spend like a month together, you know, like usually, thank goodness, we don't have children, and then of course, you know, you start hating each other and you get a divorce, so to speak. So this is what I was like able to watch around myself. It was absolutely unbelievable, and it seemed like every single pair, you know, like a couple who came, you know, who came to the camp, they all like broke up and usually ended up like in different places and stuff like that. So this was like a very, very funny place for like from like a psychological point of view.
And do you think that you had a similar experience, or people had similar experiences when you went to Thailand or in other refugee camps?
Well, you know, some of the like, you know, site tour like on the Cambodian border and stuff like that, you know, which was like incidentally among, you know, like it was governed by Khmer Rouge, which was like really absolutely unbelievable, because the same Khmer Rouge they escaped from was now actually like in charge of the camp, even though they didn't kill them anymore. But you know, it was like, you know, it was like very, very confusing, and these people, I suppose, they still had like families and stuff like that, and you know, like there were even like in the late 80s, there were like people in the camps who were born there and who didn't see like any chance of ever escaping. So now it's different, because now, you know, like they can like get repatriated and stuff like that. So it was like really not comparable, and honestly I don't know like what they do with relationships and stuff like that, but you know, there's like whole families were there, basically live in there. It was like, they say like Site 2 was the second biggest Cambodian city, albeit on you know, Thailand land in Thailand.
Maybe time for one more question.
Somebody wants to ask something of Kenny, so he has a chance to talk.
yeah. So yeah. The question is, which country do you feel to be your home?
Well, I think it's called Odoziland, and it consists of this gentleman here, and wherever he moves, I am at home.
And do you have any plans to move somewhere?
Well, you know, I told you how this guy got me to England by telling me, like, you know, like, you want to go to England, and I said, you know, what makes you think that? And he said, oh, but you told me you don't want to go to Hamburg, so I presume you want to go to London. So I want to do the same thing, and you know, sometime in the hopefully near future, I will say, Kenny, I know you want to go to Australia, and Kenny will say, what makes you think I want to go to Australia? And I said, oh, Kenny, but didn't you tell me that you don't want to go to New Zealand? And upon which we'll see, you know, the southern hemisphere finally.
Excellent. You said the very first book has now been published.
Yeah, the very first book, give me the Tracks to Rainbows in English.
And it's available in print, and is it available in
It should be still, well, it's, I'm afraid it's like not really in print anymore, but you know, it's still available on Amazon sometimes.
And the book that you read from.
And yeah, I should say that there's Give Me the Money book, which, you know, which I read from a little bit. It came out as an e-book, available on Amazon for something like $3. So like, you know, whoever has like spare, you know, extra £2, you know, can like read the whole thing like electronically. And it's coming out as an audiobook, and I'm like very, very proud of it. As far as I know, it should appear on Amazon too, but I'm not sure when. It should be like just about now, you know, like maybe a week or two. It should like hopefully appear.
Okay, great. So hopefully we'll be able to read more of your books, and I really enjoyed reading your blogs as well, and the stories that you put into them.
The blogs are only in Czech because I'm too lazy to translate them. But you know, if anyone is interested in this one, which is like bilingual, letters from London, it's available at Cosmas CZ, KOSMAS CZ, and I suppose it's like possible to order it. I think Cosmas now sends money, not money, you send the money, but Cosmas sends a book for your money, like wherever you want to. Now.
Yes, they do, yeah, I use them quite a lot. So, if are there any more questions?
So we can let Kenny talk for a while.
Okay, well, I'd like to say a big thank you to Iva and to Kenny for coming up from London all through all that, you know, horrible rain and forests and
to the
wild South Yorkshire, and that you made the time, and hopefully we'll see you here sometime in the future.
And hopefully we'll see you in London sometime in the future. I mean, it's still, you know, the big smoke still has its pluses.
Yes, thank you very much.
So I would like to thank, you know, Luděk, and I would like to thank everyone for coming, and you know, and thank the organizers very much for like organizing this whole thing. So thank you.